Hi everyone and welcome back to the Nazi Boys channel. A bit of a change of pace. I'm not in my lounge today. I'm actually in London's Leicester Square and I'm here for the premiere of Damien Leone's Terrifier 3. Pretty big fan of the last two films, so I have high hopes. I hear a lot of sick things about this film, so I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, give me a few seconds and I'll let you know what I thought. See you in a moment. So as if by magic, I'm home. I've just got home from what I didn't realise was the premiere of Terrifier 3 in the UK. So I turned up thinking it was just a regular screening, and I walk into the bar and Damien Leone is just hanging out in the bar. There are a number of cast members there, including Jonathan. So yeah, that was really fun. It was a really cool screening. And first time I've actually seen a Terrifier movie in the cinema. That's a really fun experience in itself because this film is just a really fun one to watch in a crowd of people. So I think let's just wind it back a little bit. I actually do really enjoy the Terrifier series. I think it brings something new to the horror genre that I just don't think we've seen before. I think it can kind of be lazily characterized as a bit of a gore fest, and it absolutely is. But there are so many layers to the Terrifier movies in general that I think it is elevated, and actually the gore does bring something more than your kind of average slasher. And I don't think any of these films are average slashers. I think they really do have something special. Now, I think if you've seen any of them, you can't deny that David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown is absolutely iconic. I think he really plays that role so smartly. He is so awful and so menacing, and yet really charming and really funny. And, you know, this is not a comedy in any way, but there are some real laugh out loud moments. And, you don't get many villains like that. I think Freddy Krueger is maybe the closest comparison, but was Freddy ever that funny? Probably not. I think he was more menacing. I think the kind of the physical comedy that David Howard Thornton exhibits in all of the films just elevates it that much more, particularly in the first film. And I think what's been good to kind of see evolve is just Damien Leone's kind of confidence in his own filmmaking has really been seen on screen. And I think what I would say is I feel like actually looking back now, I think Terrifier 1 was almost a bit of a practice movie for what has really turned into more of a franchise, because Terrifier 2 is when we really started to dig into those characters that actually we know and love. And those are the characters that we kind of return to in part 3. And it's that return to those characters that I think, in my opinion, makes this the strongest movie of the franchise so far. I really think it's got a weird amount of heart. It's actually got characters that I really cared about. There were certain characters art where I genuinely thought, I don't want these people to die, and you kind of know they're going to, and they're gonna die in a really gory and awful way. So yeah, I think that again just elevates it above your typical slasher, and I think you don't hear that enough on this series, that they do have a really good kind of bit of world building here, and Lauren Rivera, like some of the main cast members, just really have a kind of warmth to them that you really kind of like, that you get warmed to. So yeah, I mean, kudos to them. Now, of course, when you think of Terrifier, you're always going to be thinking about the deaths. Like, how the hell is Damien Leone going to kill people this time around? Actually, he did a Q&A afterwards, and he spoke about how he comes up with some of the ideas for the deaths, and it was interesting. I mean, there was no great process for it. He just gets an idea and kind of thinks, well, how are we going to make that happen? What I thought was interesting is Ali's death in part 2, which I still think hasn't been topped. I still think that is the best death in this whole franchise. He talked about the murder of, I believe it was Mary Kelly. She was the last Jack the Ripper victim. And if you've seen the crime photos of Mary Kelly, she's absolutely eviscerated. There are chunks of her legs missing. She's been completely mutilated, and you can't really recognise it as a human. And Damien Leone's kind of explanation was I wanted to recreate that, but understand how it actually took place. So there is a bit of historical context to it. And similarly, there's a film in this which he described as kind of his homage to the psycho shower scene, which is hilarious because it's just so not subtle and it's so violent, it's so gory. But actually, I think that, again, the gore does make it interesting. And I have a funny relationship with gore. I think a lot of people think it's really lazy and it sort of becomes a bit cheap. I actually found that the gore in this and the gore in the Terrifier movies generally is so extreme, and it's so nasty, and it's so just, you can smell it and see it, and it just looks so real. In a way, for me, that adds suspense to the movie because you're about to see something absolutely horrific. You don't quite know how it's going to play out and when. And I've never felt that way about a gory movie before because it can feel like a bit of a cheap trick. But for this, I just think because he shows you everything, you're just waiting to think, oh God, what is he going to show me now? What horrific thing am I going to have to be subjected to? And for a kid that watched a lot of those like Friday the 13th movies, which are all about kills, but cut to shit essentially by the censors who wouldn't let you see the good stuff, and having to watch grainy videos on YouTube of what the uncut gore was looking like. I just love that Damien Leone goes there and he gives you what you want. And if you don't like that, fine. These films aren't for you, but I just think he's masterful at it. It's so well executed. And if you want gore and you're into that, then I just think it's kind of in its own class. I think it's so well done. Like The Substance, which we saw last week, I think in terms of practical effects, it's definitely on a par with that. And I'm so happy to see the kind of the return of special effects and things like that. So yeah, I just want to make that defense. And, if people think of these films as just being really gory and really kind of tasteless, well, they are, but that's kind of the point. And if you're going to do it, do it to the level that this film goes to, because I think it makes it watchable and it makes it a spectacle. It's like the Grand Guignol of like the 18th century. Like you're going to it for that. And actually what I like about Damien Leone is he doesn't then just wrap it around with a kind of a crap, like nothing storyline. He gives you characters that you invested in. He kind of tries to build that world and that lore. And I thought he did a really good job of that. One thing as well that's also really nice about this film is it's a Christmas horror, and it's a very rare genre. It's a genre I love. There aren't that many Christmas horror movies out there. But I thought for a film that I'm seeing in October, the Christmas vibes were really bang on. A really oddly warm and cozy film. Lots of kind of really nicely lit, nicely kind of put together sets. And I would love to rewatch this at Christmas in a kind of a darkened lounge and have all my Christmas lights on. And it really got me into that weird Christmas spirit, as much as it's absolutely horrific and you don't necessarily want that to be part of your kind of Christmas memories. Another point which I must point out is this has absolutely, hands down, the best opening sequence of any of the Terrifier movies. That first 10-15 minutes is heart in the mouth, shocking, really violent, and again you see so much that you don't necessarily need to see. But there is also a really nice sequence which is all about sound design. So actually there is some violence there that you don't see, and actually it's nice to have a bit of light and shade. And I think on that point, I really like this film, and I'll obviously give my rating shortly. But the only thing I would say, and this kind of applies to the sort of Terrifier films in general, is there's a sort of numbing by the end. So you've seen so much violence and so much gore that it starts to kind of not maybe affect you as much by the end. And I found by like the last half an hour, there was so much happening that, I definitely felt like I've kind of seen enough. I do think there's a bit of an issue with these films. What I would love to say about number 3 is Damien Leone did listen, and this is something he pointed out in the Q&A, that he read the feedback about Terrifier 2, which is way too long. It's 2.5 hours for a slasher movie is just too much, and he kind of recognises that. This film is down to just over 2 hours. I still think it probably could have been pared back. And I think sometimes when the films go into too much of that mythos around Art the Clown, there's some sort of obscurity about his motivations and some of the other characters that they bring back, I think that's when you maybe start to lose it a bit. But I respect it. They're trying to give you some meat on the bones, essentially, with no pun intended in terms of what we see in the film. So yeah, those are my only real criticisms. I love the cast. I just think it's so well done for such for like a bunch of low budget movies. There's a lot of love in the screen. The cast obviously really like each other, and it's so ingenious. The practical effects. There's a lot of obviously like love and investment, and kind of like a family of people behind these films that I really respect. So I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I do think it's the best of the franchise. And fresh out the cinema, I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. So grateful I got to see this a good week or so before it comes out in cinemas. But yeah, I do recommend it. You'll know for yourself if this kind of gore isn't for you. Just don't bother. It's not for you, and you're not going to enjoy it. If you love just a filmmaker who's not afraid to give you what you want as a horror fan, then I think you're going to love it. So go check out Terrifier 3. Thank you so much to Substance for having me along to tonight's screening, and we'll see you in the next one.